to in this debate is that essentially the family has the right to decide whether pictures or information about their relatives are used in a way that is out of their control. Very often, it would be the case that with mediums that we're talking about, both NGOs running campaigns, because these are campaigning organizations, or media organizations, they're both capable of using information in a way which spins out of your control. We believe the families should have the right to decide whether they want to enter that cycle with the full permission of them. That can only be allowed because the grief and tragedy that they're experiencing needs to be given time. Essentially, before I will firstly give you the model in my speech. Secondly, I will talk about why we think that there are, in fact, reasons why families might want to not reveal information about their deceased relatives, not become the part of that. Secondly, I'm going to tell you why we still believe that, in fact, it is still true. There are campaigns that can be run on the basis of tragedies can still be run just as effectively without a rumination through the lives of individuals, which we think can do more harm rather than good to those campaigns. And even if that's not the case, then they can be equally effective in achieving their aims. And lastly, I'm going to tell you why it's okay to refuse to be a part of a cycle of fueling tragedies as something that runs the course of the society, and why families are right now denied the choice unless they are able to say that they don't want their names of their relatives and their lives to be ruminated. Firstly, the model. So basically we do think that, there are a couple of concerns. What happens if the tragedy is a tragedy with multiple casualties? We believe that in those cases, if there is a family that denies the right for example, pictures of a plane crash to be published, we believe that the family has the right to deny to all the other families that the picture of the crash won't be publicly available. We believe that there's no inherent value for the other families of pictures of their deceased relatives in a common scenario to be published. We believe if somebody wants the picture of their son, let's say, to be published individually as a victim of a particular tragedy, then presumably that is okay. What we also want to say is that obviously, given the motion says that it's about depictions or depicting or publishing information, we believe that obviously concerns both photographs and visual materials as written materials and specifically information about the people themselves. What we do want to make clear at the very beginning of this debate is that this debate is not about whether we have the right to know the reasons why a certain tragedy occurred. If, for example, there was a plane crash like the German plane crash, there are reasons why we want as a society to know why the thing happened. That does not mean that we are entitled to know the identity of the person who has caused that crash, given the harm that it can do to their family, which obviously is going to be my substantives. Given that there are no clarifications, questions, I believe that this model is fairly clear. That'll be quite a long time. What we want to say is that there are reasons, legitimate reasons for families to deny that the protection of their privacy is actually something that they should have the right to, because those things are very qualitative and necessary. We think, for example, that a time for grief is necessary for families, and what happens when you have media attention around a particular tragedy is that the depictions of their children, parents, or anybody else who's their relative appear within a cycle where journalists appear at their houses, ask them more questions, and not only do they have to deal with a lot of legal issues, but on top of that, they need to deal with this entire media attention. We believe that it simply either delays the time when the kids start their grief, and therefore creates, traumatic experiences for them, because they cannot return to their normal life for a longer time, but also because they might simply never never really survive the grieving period, and that might cause traumatic experiences for them in the future. We think nobody has the right to decide that you are not entitled to grief, because it's something that will have an impact on your entire life. We can see that quite often with people who lose their relatives. Generally, this has to tend to have a very big impact on their lives because of the emotions involved. We also believe that quite a lot of this information could be sensitive for families. Recently in Poland, there was a child, 13-year-old boy, who committed a suicide because he was being accused of being gay. In general, there were quite a lot of kids that bullied him. Now, the point is, his entire family was exposed to this entire media frenzy. What we believe is really important in this case is that quite a lot of people in the entire world in general the tragedies that occur to them, like suicides, for example, are often related to issues that their families are going through. And we believe that it's the right of the family to decide whether those issues are going to affect the way in which they live in their community or not. If you choose not to, it's a legitimate reason for a person to say, nobody has the right to tell me that my community is now going to change because somebody is simply interested in what my son's face looked like when he killed himself. We think that it's fairly clear in this comparative that is generally speaking not something that a person would value, that is a fairly clear comparative that the value of an information as for example, a face of a person who committed a suicide is less valuable than the peace of the family, which is able to grieve and not have their problems exposed to the entire world. Lastly,
Okay, so basically, if you like just introduce your model, we believe what's gonna happen. Press is gonna ask about the concerned family, so they're gonna not be allowed to grieve anyway. Like press will be engaged.
I mean, obviously, I mean, the model includes. I mean, the motion says explicit consent. We believe it's fairly rational that you cannot be harassed, because consent is something that you give at some point in time, and it remains valid until the point when you decide to change the nature of your decision. And from that perspective, it is obviously true that a lot of media organizations are, generally speaking, evil at points in time. But what matters here is that we believe that the family, one way or another, gets their period of grief disturbed when there is media frenzy around them. We reduce that on a comparative when we allow for a single time when they're being asked for consent that is given to the general media rather than to particular newspapers. They can obviously revoke it for particular newspapers. Lastly, we want to say we think it's very legitimate for families and to be willing to say that they do not want to participate not of their own choice, but they are not willing to participate in the way in which media frames tragedies. We think it's deeply problematic that families are not able to basically say, I don't think my son's death was exactly the same thing that happened to other people. And unknowingly, and without the ability to influence the way the story is framed, they are being told that this is exactly this particular thing that happened in the life of their children is the reason why they now ended up dead. We think that in general because you never made the choice for your relatives to die in a tragedy, there is no reason why you would be forced to participate in something that you are refusing to participate because you never had the choice to do otherwise. And for those reasons, we beg you to propose.
I thank the Prime Minister for that speech and call on the Leader of the Opposition to open the case supportively on the Opposition bench. I think they want you a bit further there for the camera, but I don't really know what they said.
You can see the sign where you're supposed to stand.
Oh.
Oh, really? That's right. I thought it was not to stay here, it's not to get recorded. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to start with some rebuttal to what has been said by the Prime Minister. Well, the thing is, it is true. The families are not asked to be involved in this tragedy. It is true. The family, the relatives that they have been killed. They are not asked to. They didn't ask for it to happen. It is true. Though what happened is a tragedy. And what we defend, and that's what the main case of the opposition here is trying to do, is trying to humanize the tragedy itself. What happens if you don't just put numbers of it, if you don't put photos, if you don't put names, if you don't put the background of the people, it will just feel like numbers. All of a sudden, people died. People just like us died in an accident, and we won't care because all the news only reveals that hundreds or even thousands of people died. That point. That's it. Let's give an example. They take a wasteland and call it collateral damage. That's what happens in war. In war, when they go and they bomb a village that has nothing to do, a village that has nothing to do with war, just full of civilians, what the army does is something like it's collateral damage. We didn't calculate it well enough, therefore people died. That's the point. Then it goes the media, without being allowed, that takes a photo and reveals that to other people. And then they start judging the army because they just bombed something that they shouldn't. They killed people. It was not collateral damage, it was people that died. Here it's exactly the same thing. The tragedy, people died. We need to humanize the tragedy in order for people to care about the event and try to help in some way. The thing is that we need to prevent people that these tragedies do occur and try to do something about it. What is the good part for the families? Yes, they won't have time to grieve. It is true. The people are asked not to have questions. They don't want to be interrupted. They want that grief. They don't want to be remembered constantly of the pain that the ones they lost. The thing is, we can't isolate them. Sometimes, not only the relatives can help. The things that the families that just go out through that. This kind of information needs to be released, especially to help in the community. They are saying that the community is not going to change. Maybe not only the community, but the way of the perspective towards the problem. You gave the example of the kid that was being bullied because he was gay and therefore he committed suicide. We need to create an awareness of the people, give the background of this person and tell him he was a human as well, he was a normal teenager that just suffered bullying, and out of that this happened. We need to create kind of a profile of the people that can be arrested in this case in order to prevent such things to happen. In the same thing, we need to do this when the tragedy happens without this relative just let me rephrase that. We need to understand that the people that died in a tragedy the people that died in a tragedy that has nothing to do with them. Therefore, plane accident. The people that were in the plane, the passengers, had nothing to do with the accident. They just suffered the accident out of random, being not by their choice, like the example of the suicide that I just gave. The thing is that this information needs to be released to create awareness towards other families, the community as well, in order to help the family. I'm going to take a point of, because I need to go forward and it's going to take off later.
The media tends to sensationalize stories and exaggerate and don't always show the pretty side. How will that lead to a more empathic or responsible public response?
Yeah, it is true. The thing is, sometimes you need to make something more tragic than it really is, than being just synthetic. And that's what it happens. If you put pictures of it, people that really suffer, or just background information that you shouldn't, all of a sudden, let's say the kid that committed suicide was an average student. But in the news they're going to say that it was a brilliant student, a talented one, and really he had a passion for politics, maybe being a politician. They have to create that in order for people to go and read. In order for you to humanize the event, you need to create this attention of the people, because we have got this ridiculous big amount of information always scrolling down on our Facebook or email accounts and everything. We need something to call our attention. That's why we need this kind of information, and that's why we need as well the stories to be a little bit more pumped up than they actually should be. No. The thing is that when you release this information and everybody knows who these people are, the thing that's going to happen is going to create awareness, like I said, in the community. There was a movie with Adam Sandler when he had a family, wife and 3 children that died in the 9/11. The thing is that information came out, and he went through a tremendous amount of people trying to invent the personal space at the beginning. Therefore, it was more difficult for him to go through that phase. But afterwards came the other part, the part that people stopped to care. It was just a name. Nobody had the pictures of them, and nobody really cared more about him, because at the beginning they gave him support and he forget about it. All of a sudden he becomes a friend that still knew about that same story, not by his friend but by the newspaper. And all of a sudden, after people tried every single way to try for him to overcome that problem, he went there and little by little he solved the problem. The thing is that this person, the friend that helped him, he knew this kind of information not throughout the family but throughout the media as well. He remembered it by going backwards and read about it and remember it and try to go and help the families. The thing is that this kind of a big event, a big tragedy, it's like never forget. Never forget that happened. Try always to go backwards. It needs to be a good story, good images to sensibilize the people in order for you to create impact of the tragedy. Otherwise, it will be just another news with just another number. Thank you very much.
I thank the leader of the opposition for that speech and call on the deputy president to continue against the war story on the problem.
One moment, because I was messing my notes. So. No, that way. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, actually the most important ideas of the opposition side was this humanization of the deceased and this creating awareness and prevent some bad people, some bad things to happen in the society. We are saying, in the contrary of what is opposition side telling us, that we are saying that family never forgets, and that is why it is so important that all the things that was that my partner was telling about actually. But not only does it harm individuals to show all these pictures and some things like that, but society as a whole. And why I will tell you in my construction. So. The most important thing is that media works like media are above the control action. In status quo, we as a families and society doesn't have influence on the media. We don't actually decide what is published, what is the narration around it. And that, why is it so harmful for the society as a whole? Because family has the right to decide whether they want the private life of their relatives, whether they want their private life to be published and to be used in some ways, because nowadays they don't have the control. They don't have the control, and they don't know whether it's going to be used. The fact that someone who was killed was gay, or that someone who was killed was black, or person is a lot of things that are like we are not only one person. People see us as white person or black person. People see us as heterosexual or homosexual or whatever, yes? And the most important thing with media attention is that they just choose the one thing they want to underline, and they are creating false picture of the person itself and of the tragedy that happens. They are creating this false information as a whole. That's why the case about creating awareness and about preventing these things to happen in the future doesn't stand at all, because actually the only thing that we are creating is that it's some false story that we want to tell to sell more advertisement during the advertisement breaks. The only thing that we want to show is a thing that can give us as a media money or give us the attention of the people. And what is even more important, the all things that they were saying us about this creating awareness and so on and so on, is that the public attention is really short. We don't really create public awareness, but by showing this picture, we are creating only short attention to something that was tragedy of the concrete person, of the concrete family. And why is so bad that we are using this information? So media has a lot of power, and media has a lot of power to decide what they want to tell us that is true. They have a lot of power to decide what should concern us as a people. And if they decide that if they don't have to ask the family about for the permission to use the picture of your relatives or the private information of your relatives, the only one institution that has the right to choose this information is media, not the family itself. And why is it so bad for the society to create such a false picture? Because it fuels all of the stereotypes in these societies. It fuels all of the things that we really don't want, whether it's happening or it's not happening. As for example, if it creates a picture that, okay, black kid was killed by someone. So we create a picture, whatever we want. So we may say this information as black person was killed by some stupid, bad white people, or we may say it the other way, that black person was stupid, that's why he was killed, or some things like that. So that's why, like, giving this right to decide to the families is giving back the right to the narration of what has happened to the people who knows who knows the best what actually has happened, because media will use only what is useful for them, not what actually happened. That's why the old case, which for sure the opposition will tell us about the right right to know what has happened, right to have the access to the information. It's all of these things are just false, because it's not actually the truth that media gives us, using this really real person to show what they want to say. So it's not actually humanization of these people, but it's actually dehumanization of these people. Yeah.
What is the alternative from local press informing about personal information about these people? The alternative is gossiping, which is more distorting those information and therefore more invading the privacy of the families.
No, actually no, because you will never forbid people to gossip. Yes, it happens. It happens whatever is going on. But actually, when you give, when you use just this interpersonal level, it doesn't create the picture for the whole society. You have like public media who just use this small matter to make it for the whole society, and you are telling actually about us about actually a different case. That's why we actually believe that this right for families is families' right to decide is more important, because of all the cases that may be useful for public, that may be good for public, they are less important than this right to grieve. And actually, what is even more important, some families will still give this permission. We will still have some information. We will still have some examples. But what is important is that, firstly, these families which want to show their relatives as an example, will have the right to decide what kind of example it will be. That's actually why, because we care about the family's right to grieve and about people's right to have true information, we beg you to propose.
I beg that Prime Minister Black's speech in column, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, continually supported the only opposition there.
So, good afternoon everyone. We are here to talk about the difference between liberty of press and the protection of privacy. And this is the main point between government and opposition. The thing is, liberty of press directed to these deceased people stands for when you die, you lose the capability of making your rights stand. So the thing is, your families doesn't get the ability that you lost when you died of having those kind of rights. So they don't get to choose whether if someone goes to the cemetery and watches your camp or tries to put flowers there. They don't choose if so the family can't really argue if someone tries tries to intercede for their rights. And the thing of protection of privacy is really simple, and I think my colleague tried to explain it very well. That is, families are protected, so of course media can't give a full disclosure of where this family lives and what do they do, because they are not the deceased people. You're losing, I think the government here is losing focus, because the focus here is the deceased people that died in this tragedy. And now, for talking about these people, we think that knowing more about these people, we can create profiles to avoid future cases like this one, like that pilot that committed suicide and got many people killed when the plane crashed. Not now. If people would be more attentive to the signals that he was showing, people would get people would be more interested in helping him not getting to a certain point where he would commit a tragedy and expand that depressed sentiment to multiply that to, not now, to the other families. So, what I'm saying here is that by knowing these stories, these particular stories, we can really identify the major critical points that lead to this tragedy to happen, and therefore the society scrutiny would be much better applied about knowing these facts, not now, so that they can really prevent this future case. Yes, you may have a comment.
This kind of scrutiny needs to be of the professionals. If you're talking about scrutiny of criminals, it's
I
the police.
understand what your point is to say. So you think that your common people can have an opinion about what this piece of information in a journal or in TV stands for. So you think that most people, the common people, are so dumb that they see an ad on television telling that they need something, and they are going to buy just because they don't have an opinion. No, people have their own opinions, and the clashes between opinions, like what we do here, is what creates a more based not opinion, but a more based idea of how things work and how things are entwined. Not now. So, because this scrutiny of society is positive, so people get, after getting awareness, people discuss this fact and can really easily get the lies in between these pieces of information. So there are sometimes we have lies or exaggerations in these kinds of informations, but by discussing how these lies stand, you can easily sometimes detect fallacies or something. So when you clash your opinion with the other people's opinion, you see a black kid, she sees a homosexual, another one sees a poor kid that committed suicide because he was being bullied. Maybe this clash of debate would get all people to know that being black didn't count, being gay didn't count, being an adolescent didn't count. The thing that counted was that there were guilty people who made him suffer, and this must be avoided to all costs to avoid tragedies. Another thing about the nowadays media is that we live in a fast world. So fast food, fast media, everything is fast and easily forgotten. The thing my colleague tried to raise was that we need to create a bigger impact, and sometimes we need to emphasize that a little exaggerated, so that people would really get this sense of community. And this sense of community, I'm going to give an example. Like, if a father loses their children in a car accident and they're his wife, people would know that he needs some kind of help in the first moment, but then they would forget this because this isn't that important. But as this grief process starts, he will get more and more depressed. And sorry, I'm losing my point here. And if people don't get this sense of community, that another close family gets sensibilized to this father being with a crescent guilty or not guilty, sorry, with a crescent grief and depression, and profiling him for a possible attempt of committing suicide, he will most definitely commit suicide and cause a tragedy over a tragedy. So this also helps the ones who stay here to be simpatical, so other people being simpatical with these people that stay here. To end our case, I think that the opposition here is not judging the guilty. We are trying to protect the innocent by getting this sense of community and information and awareness. Thank you very much.
I thank the Deputy Leader of the Opposition for that speech and call on the Member of Government to continue the case of advocacy on the proposition bench.
We think that the main problem with the first off is A, that they're debating about bans and not choosing, and secondly, they're relying on the fact that the story is always going to be told in an honest and positive way, and that the public is going to make the right informed decision. I'm going to answer that in my first point about the abuse of the media, and I'm going to talk about also the operation of the media that we believe will happen once we make this policy work, which I hope will answer the second opposition. And secondly, we're going to talk about the real damage that is happening once those families get once those families start make that decision after they're being pressured. Trust me, it will all come together. Before that, I have 1 point of rebuttal. Really, okay. Look. Basically, what opposition is talking about is the fact that we need that profile of the person in order for the community to fight whatever that person was suffering from. So no, obviously we don't need that profile because really what we need is A, the situation that First Prop already said is going to happen, okay? You can still tell that someone was maybe bullied or something along those lines, and even if not, you know what? The profile should go to the psychologist, the profile should go to the educational people, the profile should go to the police, it should go to the authorities that are dealing with it actually, okay? And not necessarily to the public who we didn't get any real analysis of how it will affect the community. Okay, and basically they told us we need the human story to feel empathy. So the case of the pilot that crashed the plane is actually a perfect example for our side because he was not obviously humanized, he was demonized. No one talked about the problems of people that suffer from depression. No one talked about the fact that the system maybe not actually responding to them very well. No one talked about the fact that we have a bit of a problem actually diagnosing depression. Everyone talked about how depressed people are probably psycho, and not only suicidal, but they'll actually kill all your friends as well and all your family. This is not the kind of coverage we want. This is not the kind of coverage that leads to a sense of community, and this is not the kind, and this is the kind of coverage that we are going to get in a particular case. And to understand the particular case that we're talking about, okay, I'm going to talk about the abuse of the media. Look, I already told you that the media will sensationalize and exaggerate, and Op1 just told me, oh, don't worry about it, they'll tell the good story. But the world we're talking about is a world where a family wants to say no. Now, I know First Prop started explaining to you why this family will say no, okay, why this family won't agree for the information to be published, but they said, okay, the reasons are legitimate. I'm going to explain to you why will a family say no. Family will say no not only when the subject is sensitive, like homosexuality, which is a fair and valid point, but also a lot of time when there's something seedy or something uncommon involved in the story. Okay. When the story isn't a good story, it isn't a story about a straight A student who something happened to. It's a story when you dealt with drugs, or the person that was affected was dealt with alcohol or some mental disability or anything along those lines, where actually the family doesn't want that because it's a story that's considered all around a bad story. It's not a story in the community that is considered something, oh, we can talk about this, but this is a story that is actually not conceived in a very, very good way. Okay, so this I believe does answer First Op's point about our sense of community, because these aren't stories that we're gonna embrace into our hearts. These are not people we're gonna turn into heroes or martyrs. These are stories because the media would like to exaggerate and would like to sensationalize. And again, we're talking just about the people that the family doesn't want to include. Okay. That the family doesn't want to publish about. These people are not going to be martyrs or heroes. They're actually going to be denounced. They're actually going to be they're gonna be perceived in a negative way. Okay, we can see it with celebrities. Obviously, something like Amy Winehouse or Whitney Houston. The only thing that we ever hear about is their drug problems, is the fact that they never took care of themselves. Okay, and basically, because that's what the media does in order to sell, in order to keep it interesting, and that's what leads to the stereotypes that First Prop talked about. Before I continue, yes.
On the point of demonizing some persons in perpetrators, for example, this plain not revealing the personal information wouldn't change anything. People will still be talking about this person in that way, and the family will still be exposed to suffering because they will know that it's about those particular guys.
I don't really understand what you're saying. Okay, so basically you're saying the story will be told, there will be a story, and everyone will be talking about it, but the family will be hurting because nobody around them knows it's their son. That's what you're saying, basically? Okay, then I misunderstood, and I'll maybe let you ask in a bit. Okay, I want to talk about the operation of the media, which I hope will answer second off. Look, as First Off told you, news constantly change. We need to search for the next scoop. They always want to publish the next thing. They always want to do the best. They always want to publish the first thing. So they won't linger around the family. Okay, you need to find the next thing. You need to get the next story. Okay, we believe there's going to be some humanity in those reporters. Therefore, they will leave the family once the family firmly asks for no. But even if you don't believe there's going to be humanity in the reporters, which you think is very reasonable, then we think that the family won't be able to stay. And look, we want to talk about the real damage that we think is going to happen once the real damage that happens once a family will either once the story is published, okay, and the family doesn't even get a chance to think about it. We think that the main problem is the surge of emotion that you're going to go through as a family. Because what happens after you get publicity? You get attention, you get a lot of empathy from people you don't know. Okay, you get empathy from your close environment anyway, but you get a lot of empathy from people you don't know. Politicians say they will help in case of gays, in case of minorities possibly. Okay, then what happens after a while? After the story dies down, after the media attention goes away, those people disappear. The empathy disappears. Okay, the politicians definitely go away. Okay, right now in Israel we've got a huge case of attacking in the gay pride parade. Okay, and every politician under the sun is saying, "Oh, I'm going to help and support the gay community." obviously they're not going to stay there after the media attention is done, and that's the damage that's being caused to the family, that roller coaster of emotion. Because at the end, so at the end of the day, because we believe the media will tell the bad story, because we believe the media will leave the family if the family has a chance to say no, and because we think that the real damage is a surge of emotion that comes with media attention, we call you to propose.
I thank the Speaker, the Government Member for that speech and call on the Opposition Member against the KDPEJA in opposition.
Okay, so before I start my main speech, I want to elaborate on a few points. First of all, why we get this media coverage, why we use it, and who is getting profit for it. We believe that basically the local communities are getting information anyway from local gossips and exchanging information. We believe that the people the most affected by this information they can get is international community or community in the country in general. So that's the picture we have. And basically how it works right now. We believe in the status quo that basically we have to raise the public discourse. Basically, we have to get some information. We believe that this information, as the first offset, are important. The age of the person, their identities, and we don't get it from the first government in the model. We don't know what exactly are we banning from publishing. We don't know. It's only name and surname or some other personal information. Then we have a problem as well with the tragedy, I guess, because we are speaking about different things as a tragedy. If it's a big tragedy or a small tragedy, just for example a car accident. So I'm gonna just talk about this bigger accident, bigger tragedies, and then how it's gonna affect it. So we believe that basically on this international level, I will just gonna do quick rebuttal and then elaborate on two main points. So my first point being why basically it's not gonna work, and secondly, why families are not the best actors to choose to decide on this case. So basically, on your point about the empathy, I guess, well, basically, I'm going to prove in my argument just right now that the empathy works. It's, for example, in the cases like big accidents, like, for example, earthquake in Nepal, when the international communities can raise money very quickly and can, provide the aid. So I'm going to elaborate on this later on with my mechanism. Then basically are saying that all the government is saying that the media are always wrong and the media are basically biased. Well, they can be biased sometimes, but we have different sources. Basically, we have different media who can provide different coverage and different version of the story. So now moving to my own content, I'm gonna first talk about how it's going to be difficult to perform this information. We believe in that in some cases we need the information very fast because something is happening right now, we need the foreign aid right now, and we need someone to react now, not later on. We believe that, for example, in the cases for example, earthquake in Nepal, which this case, basically it's very hard to get the consent from the families. It's hard for the media to go to families and get connected with them and get the consent to publish information about the people right there. And we believe that we need these facts to react. We believe that these pictures, this information which are more direct about the particular people, the pictures are basically influencing public opinion. So if we influence public opinion, then we can, for example, expect them to react somehow. We can expect them to, for example, raise money, do something for the good of, to solve the problem which is happening somewhere. We believe that's necessary for us to get this information, and we believe to get this empathy, we need to do it very quickly. We cannot wait to get this consent of the families before we publish the information. And then basically there's also the problem of the, for example, of the consent if we cannot find families. For example, if there's cases of refugees which are quite common right now, how can we expect to find the families and get the consent? It's a very difficult issue. For example, it's maybe easy, in the Western world, which is we just get personal info and we are all registered in some kind of we have identity cards and numbers, but we are speaking in general. So we believe in all the tragedies which are happening in more underdeveloped countries, it's very hard to get in touch with the family and get this consent if we want to publish it. So again, it's simply not going to be published at all, this information, and we need this information for the public to know and to react somehow. So now I can take point. Okay.
as we have explained, the point is you publish an information about an event, not about particular individuals. At not point in time are you arguing that a particular individual changes the way in which we see a tragedy that we know about.
Okay, well, we believe that basically it changes a lot. Basically, if you see like a particular individual reacting to some in some kind of a tragedy, then they can basically, it creates more empathy, and then people are reacting for the pictures. We are very reacting for like concrete pictures, not just the information and the facts. We don't react for the like 1,000 people were dead. We just react more to seeing these dying people on some picture or some like media coverage. That's what is like. It's like our incentive. It's a bigger incentive, we believe. So that's the first thing, and it's about the soft power of the public which get this information, and we believe the public is of course more influenced by the direct pictures and by direct names than just the numbers, which is like more influential. Then I'm gonna move to my second point. It is why we believe that family is not entitled to decide on these cases. We believe that in modern world, families are not that close anymore. We believe that basically, very often for someone, the friends, like someone they know, like work colleagues can be more important than the family. We don't believe that families are the right persons to decide about publishing the information of the deceased person. Why? Basically because, as I said, in modern world something is changing. Family is not as important as it was before. So we believe basically people are living separately from their families, they are not that close, so we don't believe families should have some special position to decide. And we believe it's particularly bad because, for example, if we cannot publish this information in the media, friends of the person who is deceased are not going to learn that the person is deceased because, for example, family is not going to inform them. We don't know how close the families very often don't know the friends and the people this person was connected to, so they're not going to get the information, and this information could be they deserve this information as well as the families because very often they're more close with the person than the family itself. So we believe that for this reason, family is particularly bad actor to decide on these cases, and as well, as was mentioned, in the case of, for example, politicians and stories of Amy Winehouse and etc. We believe that these people who are famous are giving kind of implied consent to be in the social media. They're giving this implied consent during their life, but as well after their death. The public, they are exposing themselves with their public activity to public scrutiny, and even whatever if they die, it still exists, and the public is entitled to know it, and it's entitled to know the information of the deceased, and the family is not the right actor to prohibit the public from knowing it. But just okay. So one final point, because I forgot about rebuttal. Basically, we talk a lot about the grief and how it's gonna work. We believe that's gonna be even worse in your case scenario because basically journalists are gonna show up in the families anyway. They're gonna ask about the consent. A lot of people from different media sources are gonna come and ask about the consent from the families, so it's going to be even worse for them because they have to deal with all the press and talk to them directly. So for all this reason, I think we go oppose.
I thank the opposition members for that speech and call on the government whether to conclude the case of INC and the opposition and the government.
Okay, I'm going to sum up this debate by two main themes. Firstly, how the media operates today and how the media will operate under our proposal. And secondly, about the damages that are caused to the families in comparison, in comparative with people's right to know, as presented by mainly both governments. As I've already said to the first government, their whole case is only about humanization and characterization of the people that have died. And she's already told them that nowadays we have a race to the bottom. The media does not really represent people as they are. It's stronger stereotypes and so. But mainly to the second opposition. You asked firstly in the POI, but there's still going to be a coverage and the family is still going to feel bad about it. Firstly, they want the main thing is the fact that they won't be publishing his name. And most important, not only the name. This motion isn't about the name. It's about covering his personal life. When they are not covering his personal life, when people around them don't know about his identity, about his family life, when people around me aren't talking about my family life and judging every step that I've done in my life. So there is a big difference between just the family seeing only a line about someone dying in an accident or being killed or so, than having his whole life being covered also. Secondly, about the fact that you've mainly have been trying to convince us in the second opposition that this motion is only about refugees and war. We have two things to say to that. Most of the coverage of the of people dying are internally about people in our countries. That's firstly. Secondly, and most important, the fact that if any media corporation, station, and so want to coverage any refugee or war casualties and so, and coverage his own life, they need to have actual data about him. If we're not debating that they shouldn't tell about people dying, and if they are gonna have to get data about his life, that means that they have the ability to connect to his family and ask for their concession. And even if it's going to be a little bit harder, that's still worth the damage caused to the families. And so now, to my positive points about the way that the media is operating nowadays, and how it's not really covering the stories in a proper way, and how it's going to operate under our proposal. Nowadays, the media is only looking for the yellow stuff. It only search for rating. It wants to attract people. And it doesn't really represent the life, the real life of the victim. It doesn't really ask the families how was it like. It doesn't care about representing all the sides of the story. It takes only one thing of the story and it exaggerated and. This is the exact race to the bottom that I have been talking about. How media is going to operate under our proposal. When the media have no option but to ask the families, and therefore it's going to have to operate with the families. It's going to be bringing stories that are much closer to reality. It's going to ask the family how is his life, what was his interest, and if there are some things that the family doesn't want people to know and it hurts the family a lot, then we will stop that race to the bottom when the family have vetoes. And it's very important to realize that the motion isn't about banning every coverage like mainly first government is saying. It's definitely not going to ban any coverage. It's just going to make the coverage much less yellow and populist and much better. And to the second point about the damages caused to the families, and we've heard some of the damages at the first half, but we bring extra to this debate about the fact that first of all, they have that false. Okay, let me rephrase that. There might be several scenarios. Sometimes the media might give you a hug and so, but that is a false feeling of a support that after several days, Rakneta have already said, no one is there beside you, and then you're suddenly left alone. In other cases, when you're already in unbelievable emotionally distress, and the media comes and represent your whole life, and you're start suddenly being the debate of the country. You see that in the media, when you go to church or when you go just to the supermarket, and suddenly people are starting to look at you and you're wondering, are they talking about me? Are they judging my whole step of life? They don't know everything about me because the media didn't represent the whole story. Okay. Because of the fact that the media didn't represent the real story. It's exactly about the race to the bottom. And 1 second. So to the two main points, because of the fact that the media nowadays is in a race to the bottom, it works only because of ratings. It doesn't represent the real story, the complexity of stories. It just put one specific thing, and because of the fact that our proposal will change the way that the media acts, it will put much higher standards to the media. And because of the fact that there is not only the fact that we're going to make the media much better, because of the fact that there is a high damage to the families, which are of course the most close people to the descendant, we ask you to oppose.
I thank the government whip for that speech and call on the opposition whip to vindicate the opposition whip, and the
just give me a second. Okay, first quick rebuttal to the things that you have said in your speeches. First, I would like to continue the point that I stated in my POI. There was an example of those guy who is actually demonizing as a perpetrator of some tragedy, and their family suffers because of that. I mean, you know, the family suffers because they know that someone talks in a bad way about someone who's close to them, who they love. You know, if they do not know the personality of that person, they will still be talking about that, but only without knowing those names. And the family still will be knowing that actually they're talking about the member of the family, and therefore they'll still be exposed to suffer in exactly the same way. So actually, your model doesn't change anything in that way. You were talking, some of you were talking about politicians who may get involved into those strategies and somehow raise their political capital on those families who suffer. And really, you really think that journalists can find a way to families politicians would not, with all the power they have and all the contacts they have. Actually, politicians can approach those families regardless of if they know the personal information from the media or not. Also, you were talking about that there is no problem in fighting those families in cases of Variga was saying, because, well, if those companies want to publish personal information about those guys, they need to approach the families. They don't approach, they will not personal information. Well, it's not exactly the case, because, well, still things like pictures are banned from publishing, so they do not need to approach the family to publish pictures, and still they need the consent, which may not be obtained because they cannot find it. And also there are other sources, like, for example, friends and witnesses of the song and so on. Okay, before I move to clashes, which in a very brief, there are privacy and the right to information and consequences of that thing, I'd like to focus on the thing that was omitted by the government side, which is who is exactly the right holder, and that was stated by the Veronica Institute. We do not believe the families have a right to decide upon the personal information that is published about these people. First, and there are two things. You know, what kind of information are published by media? They are not usually the media do not publish the information about strategies that are completely in-house and they are only matter of particular families. They publish information that are relevant somehow to the public, to the community. And if the information that somehow concerns directly or indirectly the community and the public opinion, and if the information concerns the public opinion has the right to have a full scale of the information. And as we know, the personal information, which in a broader sense, not only name and surname, actually may influence the whole picture. Your example, we're talking about valid homosexual who committed suicide. You know, the fact that the community in he lived, the school that he went to, the fact of being homosexual are very relevant for this case, and still there are personal information. So if family, for example, didn't agree to publish the information, well, we wouldn't have a debate about homosexuality, about harassed homosexuality and homophobia in Polish, which would be with loss for the problem and for the whole society. Also, you keep ignoring the fact that there are actually many different circles of acquaintance and many other relations that people engage in today's societies. And we give all of the power to know about these people to the families with whom those people are not exactly, we cannot know always that they are in good touch and they live together and they love each other, and we deprive of those information some people who may be even more interested in those information, like for example informal partners. I don't know, for example, in some countries gay marriages are not allowed by the law, and you know, those partners who are in love with each other do not have the information about those people, but families may disregard those people because of homosexuality. No, so example, we came to absurd consequences. Okay, clashes, privacy and right to information. There was I would like to focus on the privacy and how it's counterproductive for the goals you said. Right information is explained by previous speakers quite good. By ensuring the privacy of those families, you wanted to keep them from suffering, from being exposed to suffering because of the information that are published about their beloved ones. Why it is counterproductive and actually doesn't work the way you would like? You would think that, well, if they do not talk about those guys with revealing personal information, they will not be exposed to things. One is the example I gave about those talking about a person without personal information in a bad way that still somehow expose the families to suffering. The second thing is, you know, the lack of consent doesn't mean that journalists will not be interested in families. I would say more. They would be even more interested if they would approach the families and they would like to get their consent because, well, this other information they would like to sell and they would like to publish, and they may act in an unethical way to obtain this information. For example, I don't know, bribing, harassing, or exploiting the lack of ability to consent in a reasonable way because of the grief. So it may be even worse and may be even more invasive to those families. The second thing, the invasion from the rest of the society who know the personal information about the family, who are interested in interacting with those families. Not people who are complete foreigners, who do not know. If, for example, assume that you do not meet and you hear that I died in tragedy, do you really want to contact my family and to say comfort? No. Who wants to do that? Those people who live in local communities, you know, and they are not interested in it. And if we reveal personal information about those guys, the local communities will know we will approach the families. If we do not publish those information, the local communities still be interested, but will do not have the full scale of the situation, which will lead to the gossip. And as far as the public information revealed by the press may be distorted because of some factors, the gossip will always be distorted, which is what. Also, the gossips are uncontrolled. There are no civil remedies to remedy gossip. If there is a defamatory article in the press, we have civil means to somehow remedy that. Remedy that thing. Also, usually press coverage is more insight in press is usually deeper and is maybe controllable than just gossiping about things. So actually, your model is counterproductive and deprive the society from the benefits that comes with the publishing of the relevant personal information about the strategies and about the participant of the strategies. And this means, of course, that relevant information, that personal information will be relevant for the case, for the full scale of the case, to assess it and to draw the consequences from the fact and to remedy and to prevent similar tragedies in the past, which we are incapable in when assessing a model. Thank you.